to this video. This is part 2 of the general psychology and life skills module, chapter 1, the essence of psychology. And this is part 2. Thank you for supporting me and thank you for subscribing and viewing these videos. The objectives of this lesson include differentiating the major research methods in psychology, and also exploring the major steps of scientific research in psychology. So the definition of terms, and before we get into this lesson, it is important for us to discuss what we mean by scientific method. And if you remember what we discussed in the earlier video, the part 1 video of this tutorial, we define that psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So this means that in psychology, researchers want to see only what is there and not what their biases inform them. And researchers do this by using the scientific method. And by scientific method, we mean that this is a system that reduces bias and error in the measurement of data. And we'll try to define the major concepts that are important in this. So the scientific method, this is the process of testing ideas through systematic observations and the use of experimentations and statistical analysis. And when we talk about theory, we mean that this is an integrated set of principles about observed facts that is intended to describe and explain some of the aspects of experience. If you remember, when we discussed the goals of psychology, we said one of the goals of psychology was to describe, explain, control, and predict. So under theory, we are saying the theory is intended to describe and explain some of the important aspects of experience. And hypothesis, this is an alternative proposition about the relationship between two or more variables or phenomena. For example, a hypothesis can say males have higher self-confidence in making decisions than females. So this is a hypothesis or untested truth. So this is a tentative explanation that explains something. So there are major types of research, and in this module we are going to look at several, and although many psychologists pursue several methods to achieve that, in order to achieve certain objectives and goals, the three major types of research methods that we are going to look under this module are descriptive, correlational, and the experimental methods. And in the next slides, I'm going to explain each of these three in greater detail. And when we talk about descriptive research methods, we have to notice that in this type of research, the researcher simply records what he or she has systematically observed. And descriptive research methods include naturalistic observation, the case study method, and surveys. I'm going to go in greater detail in explaining each of these three types of methodologies that are used in descriptive research method in psychology. And so naturalistic observation, this is a descriptive research method in which subjects are observed in their natural environments to get the real, not artificial picture of how behaviors occurs. So the important thing is that the behavior that is observed is done in the animals or human beings' natural environment, and this is not artificial. And this is done in order to see or get a clear picture of what happens when one is observed. And the limitations of this type of methodology, what we call observer effect, and this is whereby animals or people who know that they are being watched behave artificially. What we notice that when you are being observed, you tend not to behave the way you would behave if you were not being observed. And we have what we call observer bias, and this is a tendency by the researcher who may not observe certain issues and may ignore these issues. So this is what one tends to be subjective. So may ignore certain issues and may tend to overlook certain issues as an observer, and this is natural. And so these are some of the limitations of this type of methodology. And when we talk about the case study, this is a descriptive technique in which an individual is studied in greater detail. This may be an individual or a certain case or a phenomenon is studied in greater detail. The advantage of this is that it provides a tremendous amount of data about a single case or individual. And the disadvantage of the case study is that the researchers cannot apply the results to other cases or similar people, and what researchers may find in one case cannot necessarily be applied or generalized to other circumstances or context. So this is one of the disadvantages of the case study as a research method type of research methodology in psychology, that you cannot generalize um, findings. For example, if you do a case study research method at a particular school and you get your results about that particular school, your findings may not be generalized to other schools in other districts or provinces, though the children or the classes or the nature of work being studied may be the same. Each case is different in its own way. So this is one of the limitations of this type of research methodology. And when we talk about the survey, this is also another method that is used to collect data from a very large group of people. It is useful to get information, and it addresses hundreds of people with the same questions at the same time. Its disadvantage is that it needs a careful selection of a representative sample of the actual population. So when we talk about surveys, you have to get a representative sample of certain individuals within the targeted population. And the advantage is that you can collect a lot of data at a single point in time, and you can get a lot of information fast. But this disadvantage is that you have to be very careful in selecting your data, your sample, so that it is representative of the general population. Third is correlational research, and it is a type of research methodology that measures the relationship between two or more variables. And when we talk about variables, we are talking of anything that can change or vary, that is, scores on a test, temperatures in a room, gender, and so forth. For example, a researcher may be curious to know whether or not cigarette smoking is connected to life expectancy. So this, when you talk of correlation, one will be doing a correlational study between the effects of cigarette smoking and life expectancy. So the two variables in this case would be cigarettes smoking and life expectancy. This will be two variables. Although correlational studies tell researchers a lot of issues, or whether there is a relationship between variables, or how strong the relationship and what direction the relationship goes. It does not prove causation, which means it doesn't show the case or the effect of the relationship. And this means that, for example, if there's a relationship between smoking and lung cancer, it doesn't mean that smoking causes lung cancer. So you have to notice that the correlation may be weak and may be in going in different directions. So one has to be very careful to clearly understand the relationship between one or two variables. The correlation may exist in, but the relationship of the causality or how strong the relationship is may not clearly be illustrated through a simple correlational study. There might be other variables that may be involved between the actual relationship of variables, and one cannot really connect between the two alone. There may be other variables, which in this case in research we call them extraneous variables. So the next research methodology is experimental research, and it is a research methodology that allows researchers to study the cause and effect of the relationship between variables. And in experimental research, a careful regulated procedure in which one or more factors believed to influence the behavior are studied and manipulated, and all other factors that are held constant. Experiments involve at least one independent variable and one dependent variable. The independent variable is the manipulated variable in the experimental factor. The dependent variable is the factor that is measured in an experiment. It can change as the dependent variable is manipulated. So we have to notice that, for example, a researcher may need to know whether or not class size is an effect on students' academic performance. That is, whether or not class size is an effect on students' academic performance, and the hypothesis is that the students in small classes have better academic performance than students in large classes. So one may do an experiment between these two, and the two variables will be class size and the student performance. So one may manipulate the two variables in order to get to fully understand what is going on through an experiment. And this is important. And when we remember, when we talked about the case study, the methodology, the experimental research goes further by trying to manipulate one or two variables of study. There are several stages or steps that are taken in the scientific research methodology process. And these steps include there's 5 steps. That's step 1, defining the problem. Step 2, formulating the hypothesis. Step 3, testing the hypothesis. Step 4, drawing conclusion. And the final stage, which is step 5, reporting results. I'm going to describe each of these steps in great detail as we proceed. As stated earlier, step 1 means defining the problem. So under this stage, one is to noticing something, attention catching in the surrounding. You may give to find the problem. For example, you may notice that children seem to get a little aggressive with each other after watching practical violent children's cartoons or movies. So this is the problem that you may be noticing, the violence that is exhibited by children or aggressive behavior that is exhibited by children after watching violent cartoons or movies. So you would wonder if the violence in the cartoon video could be creating aggressive behavior in the children. Hence, you may raise a research problem focusing on the effect of aggressive videos on children's behavior. So you'll be defining the problem and clearly explaining the nature of the problem. That is the step one. Under step two, one would then be formulating the hypothesis. That is, after having observed and perceived the problem, you might form an educated guess about the explanation for your observations, that is, putting into form of a statement that can be tested in some way. In the example that we talked about earlier, you might formulate a hypothesis that is, children who watch violent cartoons will become more aggressive than those who watch non-violent cartoons. So this would be your hypothesis or your intelligent guess, the one that you need to look at and test in order to see whether there's a relationship between watching violent cartoons or movies and the exhibition of aggression among children, and see the difference between those who watch the violent cartoons and those who do not watch. So this will be your hypothesis. Step three will be testing the hypothesis, and at this step the researcher employs the appropriate research methodology and to collect data or information, and this data is used to accept or reject the proposed hypothesis. In the example that we have been following throughout this lesson, one will then collect data from children who watch aggressive videos and from those who do not watch the aggressive videos, and make comparisons between the behaviors of the two groups to determine whether watching aggressive videos makes children act aggressive or not aggressive. So under this step, one is to collect data and also then make the comparisons between the two groups. And under step four, we then draw conclusions. And this is the step in which the researcher attempts to make generalizations or to draw implications from the tested relationship. So under step four, one is to draw conclusions. That is, you look at the data that you have collected, you look at the results, and then come up with the concrete conclusions. Under step five, we are reporting results. And at this point, the researcher would want to write up exactly what he or she did. That is the problem and everything, why she did it, and what he or she would have found out. So you are reporting on your results. That is, you illustrate the problem and what you did. That is how you collected the data, and what was concluded from the data, and what you find out, so that others can learn from what he or she has already accomplished or failed to accomplish. This allows others to predict or modify the behavior based on the research findings. So under step five, you report the data, you report the results, whether they are what you expected or what you did not expect, but then it's merely reporting on the findings of the research. So we have come to the conclusion of this lesson, and in summary, under this lesson we tried and explained the different methodologies methodologies that are used in psychology, and also exposed the major steps that are used in the scientific research in psychology. Thank you for watching this video, and I urge you to subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Feel free to share and write your comments below if you have anything that you might wish to share, or anything that you might want me to describe that is related to chapter 1 of this general psychology and life skills module. Feel free to write on your comment section so that I can discuss these issues or explain anything further that you might want. Thank you so much for spending your time, and may the Lord bless you. Thank you.